From bizarre things left on the moon to wild artifacts that even NASA forgot about.
The reason we have so many cabinets is each mission gets its own cabinet, and Apollo 16 and 17 get 2 cabinets.
This list is going to be a bit controversial. Are you ready for it all? Let's get started. Number 45. Inside the moon rocks vault. Did you know that there is a vault for moon rocks? There are actually 2 of them, side by side.
Managed to bring all these amazing rocks back that have taught us about the entire solar system.
Every time humans went to the moon, they brought baggies of moon rocks back to Earth. One vault has all the rocks from the moon sealed in vacuum bags and has never been opened before. The other is much smaller and has samples for research, but both are secured with combinations that take 2 people to unlock, so not everyone can just waltz in there. I wonder what will become of them. Number 44. Life on moon. Do you think NASA would go to space and not check for life on the moon? With the Apollo 11 mission, the astronauts did a lot more than you can imagine. They brought back samples from the moon so scientists could check for signs of life. NASA operates a secret lab to work on the lunar sample.
Lunar Biological Laboratory, which was specifically designed and built to look for microbial life in the Apollo 11 samples.
So far, they have found nothing. At least, that's what they have told the public. What do you think? Apollo 11 was not the only manned mission to go to the moon. 6 more followed that legendary flight to space. However, that one mission could not possibly overshadow the other Apollo mission. You'll know when you see these strange finds. Number 43. The command module. This is the Apollo 11 command module, the first ever module that made it to the moon and brought the 3 men safely back to Earth.
The only part of that mission to come home is the command module.
You can bet it was going to be kept in a museum. If you look closely, you can see the wear and tear on the command module and how re-entering into the Earth's orbit changed its whole shape. Number 42. The helmet and glove. Apollo 11 was a big deal, so everything from that mission was thought of as the holy grail, like these objects right here. This is the same helmet and the pair of gloves that Buzz Aldrin wore during the Apollo 11 mission.
Aldrin wore these 2 items, the gloves and the helmet, on the lunar surface.
These gloves are special because they were made specially for Aldrin and were made to fit his size. What's crazy is that you can even spot the lunar dust on the gloves. That is decades old. Number 41. The space camera. This UFO type artifact that you see here is actually a camera that has been to space. A little before the Apollo 11 mission, NASA sent the Surveyor 3 spacecraft to the moon. 7 of these landers were sent, but only 5 survived the soft landing.
Is this like a UFO artifact? Is that what's going on here?
Well, it is something that came back from space.
Really?
So, yeah. It's a little bit like a UFO, except we know exactly what it is.
On these landers were the space cameras that managed to survive for years. For a long time, NASA didn't bother picking them up, but then they realized that this was the only man-made lunar sample to exist and have been working this long. They had to bring it back. So, during the Apollo 12 mission, the astronauts cut out the space camera from the lander and brought it back to Earth. What do you make of this? Number 40. Space food. Going to space sounds cool until you look at the food the astronauts have to eat. Look at this package here. It is space food from the Apollo 11 mission, now stored in a museum. It includes a baggie of pork and scallop potato and something called a bacon bar. Whatever it is, it does not look appetizing. Would you try this out?
Pork and scallop potato. I did not expect to see that. That is nasty.
Number 39, the space junk. Believe it or not, Neil Armstrong brought back a bunch of random things from space. What's insane is that he pulled off this stunt so quietly that even NASA didn't know about it, not until he passed away. His wife found a white bag littered with souvenirs that Armstrong kept close in memory of his big win. Electrical cables, lights, weird tools, and even straps. What looks like space junk is worth more than you might think, especially this camera, the same camera that took hundreds of images of the Apollo mission. It is expected to be worth at least $1 million, but Armstrong barely made any money of it. Would you have done the same?
When I saw that placard there that said moon rock, directly underneath it is the food, and I thought I was looking at a moon rock, but I was looking at some scallop potatoes.
Number 38. The artifacts left behind. Men went to the moon, and then they came back. It was the news of the century. But what did these astronauts leave behind? It turns out that they left a number of things on the moon. The ladder on the descent stage with a tiny metal plaque, the Apollo 1 mission patch, 2 medals in honor of the Soviet astronaut, and a gold olive branch as a symbol of global peace. There's also a goodwill disc that sends a message from humans to extraterrestrial beings.
Attached on the ladder of the descent stage, there is a metal plaque featuring the signatures of the Apollo 11 crew. and then US President Richard Nixon.
Whether or not the alien left us on red is still a big question mark. What would you have left on the moon? Number 37. The Retro Reflector. The Apollo 11 mission wasn't just to celebrate man's first steps on the moon. It was also an excuse for NASA to plant things there. One of them was an odd experiment involving retro reflectors that the astronauts left behind purposely. The idea was that Earthlings could point lasers at these prism triangles and gather more secrets about the moon. It turns out it is the last working experiment from the Apollo 11 mission. That's insane if you ask me. Number 36. The descent stage. One thing that ties all the Apollo missions after the Apollo 11 is that they left one common item on the moon, the descent stage. The lander couldn't return the same way it came. They had pretty strict weight limitations, which meant leaving half the lander behind. Even an extra pound could have prevented the astronauts from safely returning to the command mod. This is also why the astronauts left many random items on the moon, even space junk. That one's a bit shameful if you ask me.
Automatic.
Number 35. Apollo 11. Site today. What do you think the Apollo mission site looks like today? There's no way to get live footage of the moon, but this satellite managed to capture whatever debris the Apollo missions had left behind. You can spot the footprints of the many astronauts who walked on the moon, traces of experimental setup, moon buggy tracks, and even the moon buggy parking spot. Which one's your favorite? Number 34. The famous footprint. This footprint that you see right here is probably going to outlive you. During the Apollo 11 mission, the astronauts left behind their footprints on the lunar surface. But what you probably didn't know is that it is there to last. That's because nothing gets washed away on the moon, nor does it get buried under the soil.
Can you make a footprint in a vacuum if there's no moisture in the air to lock the particles together?
There's nothing on the moon that would alter its shape or size, so this famous footprint will live as long as the moon lasts. But the lunar shoe made it back to Earth and was expected to go off at least $80,000 during the auction. Number 33. The Time Capsule. This package from the moon was sealed for nearly 41 years. The last man to walk on the moon was Eugene Cernan, and the life support cover he was wearing was sealed right after the Apollo 17 mission. After 4 decades, when the time capsule was finally opened, there were specks of lunar dust still sitting on the suit.
The really cool thing we're here to do at the museum today is to open a package of one of the last things to return from the moon in 1972.
Experts were baffled, but couldn't keep the smiles off their face. It was like sneaking into the past. What do you think of this memory frozen in time? Number 32. The shoulder strap. Anything that catches the lunar dust becomes too valuable to be thrown away, like this shoulder strap. During the Apollo 12 mission, an astronaut had to go out and do some form of extravehicular activity on the lunar surface. The specks of dust stuck onto his suit and eventually traveled onto his shoulder strap. So now it is a lunar sample that's worth at least $30,000. Crazy, isn't it?
An Apollo 12 shoulder strap embedded with lunar dust, one of the holy grails for space collectors.
Number 31. The check. Astronauts can barely walk straight while walking on the moon, so going back and forth to the module wasn't an option. That's when this cuff checklist came in handy to help them remember all they needed to do on the lunar surface. This neat tool is from the Apollo 16 mission, but is now a permanent exhibit in the museum. How would you rate this strange artifact?
During the Apollo 16 mission, Charlie Duke used this checklist, which would attach to a copper cuff.
Number 30. The Asteroid Sample. NASA recently brought back a giant chunk of asteroid sample. What they found next was shocking. The OSIRIS-REx brought back the biggest asteroid sample to date, about 0.26 pounds of space rock. The asteroid was nearly 4.5 billion years old, but close to Earth's own age. But that wasn't the interesting part of the discovery. Apparently, scientists found signs of life in the space rocks. They think it has a striking resemblance to how Earth looked before life bloomed on its lands.
NASA just opened up a capsule from space containing rock and dust collected from a 4.5 billion-year-old asteroid.
Number 29. The confusing tape. This Apollo mission brought back something that remained hidden for decades. Even the astronauts refused to speak about it. Apparently, they heard a strange noise in space and couldn't believe their ears. These guys were trained men who knew what a technical failure looked like.
The conversations that follow the sounds make it clear they are unlike anything the astronauts have ever heard.
There was no way they mistook an interference signal as space. Plus, it couldn't have been from Earth either, because they were on the dark side of the moon. What do you think they heard? The strange part is that the tapes were not discovered until much later. At least they were leaked, which is not something you can say about the Apollo missing tapes. Rumor has it that NASA has secret tapes of bizarre footage from space that they refuse to show to the public. If there's nothing on there, why hide it? Number 28. The Hair Scrunchie. This is the most shocking artifact that you will find in the Space Museum. Pamela Melroy was the second woman to command a space shuttle, so when the museum asked her to donate something to keep her memory frozen in time, she decided to give them her scrunchie. It still has one of her hair attached to it. It turns out that it is a pretty important thing in space. Long hair can get in your way after all.
Kathy Sullivan was the first American woman to go outside on a spacewalk.
I suppose you'd like some tools to work with in a couple hours.
Number 27. Last Man on the Moon. It had been years since the first man walked on the moon, but even then the next few Apollo missions were a bit chaotic. This old footage is from Apollo 17, the last manned mission to the moon.
Few people visiting the Air and Space Museum today could remember the last man on the moon.
The astronaut made one mistake that many people don't know. He broke the mudguard. This was supposed to prevent the lunar dust from ruining their spacesuits while they drove around in the moon buggy. It was a huge problem, but in the end, they created a custom mudguard and saved the mission. What's funny is that you can spot the panic on the duo's faces, even from behind their helmet. Number 26, the camera on the moon. With every Apollo mission, the astronauts left something behind. They couldn't have taken everything back, but this one was intentional. The camera recorded the beautiful footage as the lunar module took off with the crew and left the descent stage on the moon.
2, 1, ignition. Right away, Houston. Vector grid.
Number 25, the moon buggy. In the long list of technical equipment that was left on the moon, the buggies are just another item. One astronaut claimed that he took his Bible with him to space, but then he decided to leave it on the buggy's dashboard. It might still be there, but not in the best of shape though. I wonder if aliens come by and ride around these moon buggies. Who knows? Maybe they do.
He's got about 2 wheels on the ground. He's a big rooster tail out of all 4 wheels. And as he turns, he skids, the back end breaks loose just like on snow.
Number 24, Neil's bizarre speech. You'd imagine that a man who was the first to walk on the moon would be happy and cheerful, yet these guys sounded timid and reluctant at their press conference. Armstrong even said something cryptic that has been the center of controversy for decades. What is this protected truth that he's talking about? What did they possibly see there? Why does he look so intimidated? All these questions have been swirling in viewers' minds for years, yet there is no good answer to explain the footage.
To you, we say, we have only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone.
Number 23, the hammer and a feather. Here's a little science lesson for you. The astronauts wanted to check the gravity on the moon, so this gentleman decided to bring a hammer and a feather along with him to space. The footage shows the astronauts throwing them at the same time. Gravity pulled off the rest of the magic as they both fell down at the same time on the lunar ground. Funnily enough, these objects were also left in space and may still be on the lunar ground today. I bet you're happy to see physics come into action in real life. Stay in school, kid.
Who made a rather significant discovery about falling objects in gravity fields. They'll hit the ground at the same time.
Number 22, the United States flag. America got to claim all the bragging rights when they planted their flag on the moon. But where is it now? Is it still there? Apparently it is, but not entirely in the same state as when the astronauts left. Apart from the fact that it got knocked over while the crew was taking off, it may have become battered. Experts believe that it may have turned white by now, and we've got the UV exposure to blame for that tiny bit.
We were most curious about the flags the astronauts left behind during 6 trips to the moon.
Number 21, the Fallen Astronaut. Here's a NASA secret that even the astronauts were too scared to spill, but somehow it still leaked. During the Apollo 15 mission, one of the astronauts pretended to clean behind the rover, but in reality, he was placing this memorial on the lunar ground. The plaque hosts the names of the 14 astronauts and USSR cosmonauts who had tragically lost their lives in the space race. There's also a tiny figurine put pretty close to the memorial. It is called the Fallen Astronaut, and it can probably still be found there if anyone decides to go back there.
This day, there lies a small aluminum plaque honoring 14 NASA astronauts and USSR cosmonauts who passed away in the line of duty.
Number 20, the Apollo map. This one is a pretty special artifact. It is a map of the lunar surface, but it is also like a planning chart. The astronauts used it to decide where they would land, but that's not the interesting part. Apparently, one astronaut from each manned mission to the moon signed the map at exactly the place where they landed on the lunar surface. Pretty cool, right?
Edgar Mitchell, the lunar module pilot, landed in Frau Maro, and that is the area where Apollo 13 was due to land before their accident sent those astronauts astronauts back home.
Number 19, the F-1 engine. There are some artifacts that NASA has forgotten about, like this one here. It is the same engine used in the Apollo mission and is now burnt up, battered, and rusted. There were many things from different Apollo missions down in the ocean, and Jeff Bezos took it upon himself to recover them all from the sea's depth. What do you think about these amazing finds? Number 18, the sunken artifacts. A group of divers went to the sea and stumbled upon space junk. This is the debris from the Challenger space shuttle that was on its way to space nearly 4 decades ago. But 73 seconds into the flight, it burnt and crashed, taking the lives of 7 people aboard. NASA had no clue that they would end up finding its pieces in the sea. Lucky find, if you ask me.
Off the coast of Florida, History Channel divers were looking for the remains of World War II aircraft. Instead, they came across a 20-foot relic from one of America's saddest days.
Number 17, golf on moon. Here's a strange little something that was left on the moon. A golf ball and a 6-iron head. During the Apollo 14 mission, astronauts snuck up a golf ball and a club to space. Almost no one knew that he had hidden these suit. When he got there, he used a custom club to hit a couple of shots. One of them went for miles, but they had no idea where. This was probably the first and last time a man played golf on the moon.
Drop it down. Unfortunately, the scissors so stiff I can't do it with 2 hands, but I'm going to try a little sand trap shot here.
Number 16, strange lights in the sky. This footage from a NASA mission ended up recording something creepy. An odd ball of light can be seen zipping across the space on the camera. First, it moves to the left, turns around, and then goes back to the right. But this time, it either vanishes or speeds away at a blazing pace. NASA has yet to comment. Number 15, interview with the alien. God knows if this is real or not, but it has sparked a lot of controversy on the internet. According to the clips, NASA brought back an alien from space during a secret Apollo mission. It was shifted to Area 51, where it was interviewed and experimented on. The strange being looks unconscious, but it is unclear if it is dead. Do you believe the story? Some artifacts from the moon came to Earth. Humans left some behind. But what about the things found on the moon that left even experts scratching their heads? These mysteries will shock you to your core.
The figure who is just barely visible in the left foreground is the telepath. And behind the camera is a raked seating area for observers.
Number 14, the creepy formation. A man was watching the ISS feed live when he spotted something creepy in footage. This bizarre series of lights seemed to be moving at insane speed from one point to another. They appeared to be moving in some creepy formation and then vanished out of view. People are out there thinking that it is possibly the biggest fleet of UFOs they have seen. Do you think it is a UFO? Number 13, SpaceX rocket sees a UFO. These SpaceX astronauts were out in space when they saw something strange fly close to their rocket. This happened only 12 minutes after the astronauts left planet Earth. Just as part of the rocket takes its leave, an object comes at a blazing speed and zips a few feet away from the rocket. What do you think it is? Experts believe that it is ice from liquid oxygen in the rocket. Do you agree with them?
This object you see here was caught on camera flying past the SpaceX rocket just minutes after liftoff last week.
Number 12, the moon crash. A while back, something spooky was caught on the space camera. Apparently, an object had struck the moon and left 2 massive craters behind. One of these craters was at least 300 miles long. Whether it was intentional or not is still up for debate. Number 11, ancient structures on the moon. Over time, there have been countless pictures from the moon that have raised more questions than answers. They came directly from NASA, but even the people sitting there refused to speak about it. These controversial pictures are of weird structures found on the moon. Some say that they look like Egyptian architecture found on Earth. Places like pyramids and tombs seem to be standing erect on the lunar surface, yet nobody can explain them. What are they? What do you think about all of this?
And what's so bizarre is that this area has undeniable architecture that looks like what you would see from obelisks.
Number 10, the Black UFO. During a routine repair at the International Space Station, astronauts reported seeing a black UFO in the sky. People were startled to see the picture, but it wasn't as crazy as what happened next. People on Earth have spotted a mysterious cloaked figure roaming the sky. It is unclear if they were both at the same time, but does that even matter? Do you think it is the same thing? Number 9, the fast-moving light. Here's another suspected footage of the UFOs from space. These light orbs were crazy fast, moving at expected speeds of nearly 11,000 miles per hour. If not UFOs, what do you think they are?
A structure that's definitely not rigid, or it's not a solid metal structure. Doesn't look like anything I've ever seen on the outside of the shuttle, that's for sure.
Number 8, the secret cave. There are a lot of things on the moon that remain unexplainable to this day.
So there's absolutely no reason why you should think that something can't move around or fly around in a vacuum. And also, you can clearly see the footprint of the shoe in the fumed silica.
Like this mysterious cave that NASA spotted. The hole was estimated to be at least 147 feet wide and over 262 feet long. Is it a secret alien base or something else?
Analysis of NASA data has found a cave believed to be about 80 meters long and 45 meters wide. That's a cool cave.
Number 7, the AlienLike Object. This is a video of a guy who was going through the International Space Station feed, but then he spotted something and couldn't help but record it on his phone. Is that a satellite, a UFO, an alien spacecraft? Whatever it is enough to send chills down your spine. Number 6, the odd figure. Look at this clip here and tell me it doesn't scare the hell out of you. In the most bizarre of clips, this guy brought out this odd image of a figure standing on the lunar surface. The figure is black and appears to have a slender body. Do you think it is real? Even if it is fake, it is a pretty good one. Number 5, the monolith. The whole world turned its head towards the clip when it realized what it recorded. There is a monolith on the moon. It is unclear whether it is real or fake, but it seems to be casting a shadow on the lunar surface, which has tipped off many viewers. Heck, even Aldrin has talked about seeing a monolith on the moon. This guy actually stepped on the lunar surface. You have to believe what he's saying, no?
Habitation on the moon. We can visit other people with their habitation. We can keep track. If there's something very important to be developed from the moon, I'm not sure what it is right now. And I sure think we should identify what it is for America to make such gross expenditures again.
Number 4, the colorful orb. This footage captured something unexplainable in space. The clip shows a bright object moving up at a fast pace. The shapeshifter then changes colors and vanishes into thin air. What do you think it is? Number 3, the rotating object. NASA officials spotted something strange in space and couldn't put a name to it. The black object seemed to be rotating at a slow speed and looked like something out of this world, almost like the typical image of an alien-like object. But it looks too slow to be a UFO. Is it a satellite or something else in disguise?
Roger, and stand by. We'll take a look at it.
Number 2, pyramid-shaped rocks. Forget pyramids. The moon has a bunch of pyramid-shaped rocks. What are these? Did someone leave them behind? Any guesses? Number 1, moon tree. Did you know that hundreds of seeds hitched a ride to the moon? During the Apollo 14 mission, NASA sent seeds from Earth to orbit around the moon. When the seeds came back along with the crew, NASA called out people who would plant them on Earth. Many volunteered. Today you can spot hundreds of moon trees in at least 23 states around the country. Have you ever seen one? That's all folks on the list of some wild NASA artifacts. Which one was your favorite? Have you seen any of these before? Do you have any theories for these unexplained mysteries? Let us know in the comments below. While you're at it, smash the like button, hit subscribe, and please press the bell icon to stay updated on the latest news. Thanks for watching.